I just couldn't get the hang of it. I honestly thought I was going to die. It was, an Estoril's got that like long straight with a slight bend in, and it felt like we're doing about 400 k's an hour, and I'm just thinking I've got no strength holding these narrow little things in the handlebar, and here we go now. I'm just like, I feel like the leathers don't, I've never had to crash in leathers. Don't know how well they work. It just doesn't feel like much.
Hello, welcome to Last on the Brakes, the MotoGP podcast with myself, Matt Dunn, and joining me as ever, Fran Wild. And you were just listening to our guest on today's show, the undisputed most successful downhill mountain biker ever, the GOAT, Greg Minnaar, telling us about one of the only times in his life that he actually thought he was going to die, and that was on the back of a two-seater MotoGP bike. But Fran, hello, how are you? What are we mainly talking about with Greg today, though?
Well, there is that nice little nugget of a story from when he was on the back of the two-seater, plus a little bit more. He does get nervous in his own athletic endeavours, as you'll hear, but nothing quite like that. So that's an interesting one, I think. But one of the biggest focuses is what it takes to stay at the top of a sport for 2 decades, as Greg has done. His interpretation of the phrase GOAT, for those of you who don't use that as probably too often as we do, greatest of all time. That's what that means. And then stuff like running into Brad Binder at the local motocross track, sport in South Africa, and being sort of one of those non-traditional sports, not a Springbok, something a little bit different. I think it's pretty good, I think. And we'll find out that Greg's background, his first passion was motorbikes.
Yeah, quite right. So a little bit of background about Greg, because we appreciate that there's going to be some people listening who have come from Greg's fan base, want to hear what he thinks about motorcycles or even aspects of his career. There's plenty of that. But for those of you MotoGP fans who've never heard of Greg Minnaar before, well, he's very much like Valentino Rossi of mountain biking, essentially, which is, of course, the title of this episode. He started mountain biking on the world stage in the year 2000. In year 2001, he was the actual World Cup Series overall winner. Now, in mountain biking, there's a little bit of a difference. The World Championships is a single one-day event which declares who the world champion is for the next year. The World Cup Series is more like the MotoGP Championship, which is the series that runs throughout the year. I hope that quite makes sense. But Greg...
That really bothers me because it's kind of backwards as to how most other sports define these things.
Well, quite, and it's exactly the same in road cycling as well. So it's a bit of a difficult thing to get your head around. But Greg, been the most successful, most decorated rider in terms of world championships and World Cup overall victories as well, and ahead of the leaderboards in terms of wins as well. Greg really has seen it, done it, fought off all competitors that have come his way over the last 2 decades, although he's got a real task ahead of him with the likes of Loic Bruni and the current state of play in the mountain bike field as well. You'll hear more about that a little bit later on. But Fran, I guess to discuss the meaning of GOAT, that's not really anybody that we could discuss it better than Greg Minnaar.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's always interesting to get the thoughts of fans and a load of different people from different parts of a sport. What does GOAT mean? Who is it? Or why is it not someone that often gets touted around? But it's also super interesting to hear from someone with experience of being called that, but also being a super normal guy and not walking around with some sort of homemade crown, deciding that that's who he's going to be forever. So I think it's quite good. But that's our question for you guys before we head into the episode. What do you think makes the greatest of all time in any sport or any kind of situation where there is that? There's often such different arguments for it. Is it about the stats and the numbers? Is it about raw talent? But then how do you judge that raw talent? Is it about more the level of success when they were at their peak? Is it the rivals that they beat? It's an interesting conversation, I think, definitely. What do you think is the most important kind of...
It's an interesting one, because I would definitely not contest anybody who says, because as a mountain bike fan, I am one of the people who would say, yep, Greg, undisputed GOAT. But also, I think for me, in the overall sort of meaning of it, I think the level of influence that person has on a sport, whether they're able to change the culture of that sport, dictates as well if they're able to be a GOAT or not. I don't think just numbers straight come into it. But then also, I like the thought of there being people who say, oh, well, this person is the greatest person to ever ride a bicycle or a mountain bike. You know, that phrase gets turned around a lot with Casey Stoner, for example. But you can't say Casey Stoner's the GOAT because he's only got 2 world championships. You know,
really?
Well,
Can you?
That's the question. So, you know, guys, let us know what you think. And what do you think as well, Fran? I mean, which school of GOAT are you in?
I find this more difficult in MotoGP. I think maybe because there's been such a massive difference in the equipment, the rivals, everything throughout eras. So I would find it quite easy maybe to sit down and say, in my opinion, this person is the best of this era. This is the best of this. Like we talked a little bit off air as well. I like that. But I find it hard to quantify, to really put my weight behind one or the other on a general scale. I find it much easier in Formula One because for me it's just like stats don't matter. It's Ayrton Senna, don't at me.
But then other people will say, well, you can't say
will
that,
absolutely
so
tear me down.
You know, yeah. So I mean, that's one of the most interesting. I think there's one undeniable thing come from all this, which we don't actually discuss in the episode, but there is such a thing as a greatest in every era. You know, rather than all time. That's probably a more easy thing to decipher. So yeah, I guess let us know what you think about that, and also just get comfy before you listen to this one, because Greg is such a pleasure to listen to. He's so chill and yeah, just got some great stories to tell.
Definitely. So without further ado then, please keep it nice and kind in your debates in the comments. We know people can get quite passionate about these things. Hope you enjoy the episode, and with no further ado, here we are talking to Greg Minnaar.
Thanks for setting this up.
Hey, such an honor to speak to you, genuinely. We've had some cool guests lately, but you're definitely up there with the people I'm most excited to speak to. I think that stands for both of us, doesn't it, Fran?
Yeah, definitely. It should be. I think hopefully we've got some interesting parallels between our sports.
Yeah.
But also, you know, yeah, I don't know. We've got a lot to talk about, I hope.
I hope you're not going to put me on the spot.
No. I mean, we want to
Don't worry, it's not a quiz.
Yeah.
Not too badly.
Yeah, like, please, Greg, tell us of Brad Binder's first win and where he started from on the grid. Nothing like that. No, I mean, I noticed that I know loads of mountain bike, especially downhill guys, are massive MotoGP fans, but I didn't realise you were one until I saw you commenting on the likes of John McPhee's Instagrams and Brad Binder as well, and I was like, Greg's a MotoGP fan, and that's why we got in touch. So I guess, that's right. You are a big fan then.
Well, I do follow it, but I wouldn't say I follow it close enough. John McPhee I'd met through a friend of mine, Chaz Davies, and so being in Andorra, we hung out a bit and trained a bit together. So then you suddenly follow the sport a bit closely, and a bit closer. So that's how I got to know John, and I guess he's from near Fort William, so we had lots to talk about. And then I met Brad at our local motocross track in December. And I was just going out with I ride once a week. And being in December, we were all on holiday. And Brad's got a holiday house not too far from where I live. And they'd come up to the track to ride for the day. So we ended up having a good day out riding. And it was good to meet the guys. I mean, being from South Africa, you'd think we'd have met somewhere along the line before, but
it's a big country.
We hadn't, so yeah. So it was cool.
Awesome.
Really good guy.
I'll tell you a bit of backstory for me and Fran then, because I mean Fran and I are flatmates as well, as because we work together, of course, in Dawn, who run MotoGP. I first sort of heard of you about 10 years ago when I first got into mountain biking. And then sort of got to know you more and more through the This Is PT series and the Syndicate YouTube videos. Now, like, for everyone listening, we always at the end of the show tell people, right, you have to go and look up this video and this video on the internet. So I'll say it now as well. Go and look up This Is PT series, because it's an amazing insight into sort of the mountain biking world. And because I was watching that, that's how Fran got to know you and mountain biking and everything. And it just looked so fun. Like, if you've been with them since 2008, your team, and just behind the scenes being part of it just looks awesome. So what's it like from inside the Santa Cruz Syndicate?
Yeah, the Syndicate was like, I joined the Syndicate in 2008. I just come off a massive shoulder injury. So when I joined the Syndicate, it was like this new team, new bike. The bike kind of helped me in areas where I felt like I needed help. I needed like a little bit more suspension to help me attack the technical stuff. Coming from all this injury, I felt like this was the right combo for me to do well. I ended up having a great year, and I've stayed there ever since. The team is initially Rob Roscop's dream. Rob himself was a professional skateboarder, so he understands the pressures of competing and what it's like to be a sports person, and that's it's kind of unique in itself. And he's kind of given us the freedom to be the characters we are, and this, I think, prolonged my career a little bit longer than I thought. So it's been great. It's been a great home. Does feel like this family on the road racing, and especially this year, it makes you realize, being at home now in June where we should be racing, it does make you appreciate the family a lot more.
Yeah, I can imagine. It must be a bit strange as well. Like, I imagine it is for a lot of guys in the MotoGP paddock, because a lot of your kind of quote unquote social life ends up being at work, at events. When you travel, you always see the same people. You obviously get a really good bond with them. And then suddenly we're in this situation where it's like, hey, now I'm in my little bubble. And of course, everyone has friends and family and support at home, but it must be quite strange having been so long just in the same place after you're used to that kind of constant little circle.
Yeah, you're so right. Like, I've never been home in June or even May. It's the first time I've been home in May in 20 years. So it's the best time of the year to be here. And yeah, you can see the weather behind it. It's dry and sunshiny, so the trails are really good. And I'm just having a load of fun riding with my friends at home because I've never done that before. I'm normally back home training, getting ready for the season. I always head over in about April. And then I'm back with my other friends, which are racing and the racing environment. So I have like these two different lives that I live. One back home here with my local mates, and then another in Europe or the US with guys I race with. So yeah, it has been different, but it's also been a great experience being back home and a bit more relaxed.
Can I ask as well, wait, your house, so we were in doing research leading up to this, saw the Rob Warner Meets video there. You were just having a house built. Is that the one that you're in there right now?
Yeah.
So that one is opposite, the valley opposite, the Peter Maritzburg downhill world champs course. Is that right? The one that you won the 2030 champs.
That silhouette behind me is exactly that hill. Wow. So what's really nice now is I got myself an e-bike. I got a Santa Cruz Heckler, and we've been rallying that forest flat out for the last couple of weeks. We've been in lockdown, but we've been allowed to exercise, and that's within our restriction of 5-kilometer radius. So that forest, I don't think it's ever been so well used before.
That's brilliant. How fun.
That sounds, quite different to my forest, which is about 25 trees.
Yeah, my local one is, my local trails is an old railway line, which has just got a bit of gravel over the top of it. It's very beautiful, but it's not quite as it's not a World Cup track, put it that way. So the thing we wanted to go back to the very beginning of your career, because you've basically, your start in mountain biking is pretty much the same start that most MotoGP races had. Your dad got you a PW50, is that right? And you were doing motocross races, but then somewhere around your early adolescence, you started doing downhill mountain biking and then jumping over cars on motocross bikes. Can you fill in the gaps for us on what on earth happened there?
Well, yeah, the first two wheels I got was a BMX, and my dad had got this little BMX for me, I think, for my 3rd birthday. And I walked into the room where they were hiding it under all this bubble wrap, and I just started crying when I opened it up because I didn't want a bicycle, I wanted a motorbike. And my dad had raced. So growing up, I'd seen, when I was a kid, seen all these videos and pictures of my dad racing. So I think for my 4th birthday, I finally persuaded him to get a PV50, and I started racing at 4.5. And I raced through until my early teens, and along the way, we were doing these school kind of fate things, and we didn't quite know what store we were going to do for the school. So me and my mates decided, we had seen it on TV, some guy jumping cars. I was like, this is pretty easy. We'll get my dad to build up a ramp, and we'll just jump cars, we'll raise some money, and that can be our little contribution to the school at the school fate. And it ended up getting a little bit bigger, and it got to I had to do shows at this royal show, like the biggest agricultural show in our city, and that was kind of in a transitional period where my parents, for some reason, and we don't really know why, they bought a bicycle shop. And my dad had started BMX in South Africa, and I think maybe had some kind of tie, and that's what he decided to do. So he was still working at Coke, and my mum had to run the bike shop, and I was trying to race motocross, which, if you're not training a couple times a week or at the track, your results start to slide, and I was just starting to lose interest. So I started riding mountain bikes, and, I could go in the forest, behind me now and go and ride by myself or with some friends. I didn't need my dad taking me out to go and train. And I went off with my sister because she started racing. And I hate watching sport live. To me, like, that is the worst thing. Like going to MotoGP and watching all these guys sit on these amazing motorcycles having so much fun racing each other. I just get so jealous and envious. I want to be on the bike. It wouldn't matter if I was stone lost. That's to me in sport. I'd rather be doing it than watching it. So I get dragged along to this mountain bike race. My sister's racing, and I just decided, well, let me just race as well while I'm here. And I kind of enjoyed it, and it just grew from there.
That's pretty interesting then. So it was just kind of more that you lost that passion for motocross, and because it takes so much more to be able to do that, obviously the equipment that you need, the places you need to go, you say your dad needed you to like take you there to enable that. I guess mountain biking must have felt like quite a different freedom compared to that kind of crazy world of more structure and how you had to train and all of that.
Well, it was in a sense. I mean, you still train just as hard, but you're right in saying that at a young age, you need your parent or someone to be taking you to the track, to making sure that the bikes are ready. I mean, you're 8, 9 years old riding around a track, you need some parental supervision or something. And I just didn't have that in my early teens. My father was working at the bike shop, and I couldn't go out and train. So this is where I took to mountain biking. It's something I could do by myself. And it was hard for my dad when we did we started to race seriously, because he was then involved like a motocross dad, and in a way of, oh, let's go to the race, let's prep the bike. I'm like, well, I've been doing it for the last couple of years by myself, so I'll keep doing it. And he's like, no, this is how it's done. And we used to butt heads a lot, trying to get ready for racing at a younger age. But it's good we can laugh about it now.
Yeah, watching like videos about your background and stuff, it does seem you and your dad, and you and your whole family very, very close, and you do have a good relationship. I love that it was like a motocross dad, but in mountain biking. There's just the amazing meme, I think, where it's like a kid's motocross race, and there's a dad who's got clearly a massive bamboo cane, like trying to whip his kid as he comes past and stuff. That's the sort of thing I imagine when someone talks about motocross dads. But
oh geez, motocross dads when I grew up were wild. I mean, my dad was definitely not, when I say a motocross dad, I meant involvement. But I do know what you mean about running around after the guy on the P50, because if he gives this kid a little shove here and there, it helps him get up quicker, might win the race. I mean, I think the fathers used to just wear running shorts and shoes and just race their kid around the track as fast as they could.
It's probably more of a way to keep them fit as well, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
I guess that kind of stuff, though, it's like, to a certain point, maybe you're going to need some encouragement in that. But if you don't have the passion for the sport, in my opinion anyway, I don't think any parent can fully manufacture that. Because at some point, you're going to just say, like, no, I don't want to do this today, and then have a bit of a sulk. So did you feel like you definitely found that passion again once you started doing mountain biking that had kind of faded with motocross?
I don't think my passion for racing motorbikes has ever faded. I think I've still loved racing motorbikes and love riding motorbikes. But when you're trying to be competitive and you can't reach your goals because something's holding you back, it helps you deviate into something else. I'm super competitive, if you haven't noticed. And, like when you're at a race and you're only riding possibly once a week, and you're competing against guys who are riding three, 4 times a week, it's hard to maintain the fitness level and the pace. And I think that's where I lost interest, And I'd raced quite a bit through a young, from a young age. So I don't regret moving. I still every now and then go back and do some local races, which is always good fun. But yeah, the mountain bike has definitely opened up a whole new world for me.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I'm going to skip ahead sort of in terms of your career, and like you said, yes, you could probably tell you're quite competitive. Yeah, I'm sure most of the listeners who have never even heard of you before listening now might have guessed already, you're also an incredibly relaxed and zen person. But the main reason why we're speaking to you is because over the last 20 years, you are categorically the most successful downhill mountain bike racer in history. And that sort of career span is very similar, and I'm not sure whether you've ever thought about this, to a MotoGP's own Valentino Rossi. You've been competitive at the top for 20 years in the sport. You've seen so many different sort of bike technical changes. You've overcome so many different rivals, and you're still going into 2020 when the season actually gets underway. No one's going to be counting you out for World Cup wins, overalls, or even World Championships. And so, I want to ask you, basically, do you consider yourself, as many people call you, the GOAT of mountain biking? What do you think of that title? Because in all these videos I've looked at you, you've never addressed it, but other people have just gone, Greg, the GOAT, here he is.
Yeah, I don't know. People do bring it up a lot, and I'm slowly embracing it to a degree. But at the same time, I didn't. When I started mountain biking or any sport really, I didn't ever think it would ever happen. So it's not something that I'd set out to be, and it's kind of happened. It's just happened along the way.
That's really cool.
So what do you think then is the secret to that? Because longevity, obviously a lot of people may come up against an injury just from pure bad luck, and that ends up cutting their career short in any sport. But there are people like you and Valentino. It's actually crazy that you've kind of fit in a whole 2 decades of being so competitive. What is the secret to that?
I have no idea. I don't feel like I get older. I don't feel any older today as I did, 5 or 6 years ago. And I think it's kind of possibly hindered my career a little bit too, because everyone, when you reach in your 30s, everyone goes, you're coming towards the end of the career, you need to start planning ahead and start other things and get ready for life after racing. And, now I'm 38 and I'm still feeling just as competitive. I was watching back on some videos, and, when you compare Valentino Rossi to myself now and parallel the 2 careers, I'm not sure which MotoGP it was last year, but he looked like he was going to win one, and I think he was in second.
Americas.
And then you had
Texas.
and then you had Alex Rins, like a new young guy just coming in and just pipping him. And that's exactly what happened to me last year. As soon as I had a great race into second place or into the lead at the time, looked like I was going to win, and then another young Frenchie just came in and pipped me, and so it's hard, but that's what keeps me going. When I'm training, that I'm thinking of those races that were so close, and so each year I feel that when I come to the end of the season, I look over my bike and I go, these are the areas where I need to work on my bike and get ready for the season to come. I go to myself and I go, well, where can I adjust? I felt like I was really strong on these sections, but I didn't feel as agile as I should. I should be coring a little bit quicker. And I set up a whole new program with my trainers for the following season. So I think that, I'm just that competitive that I've never felt at any point in my career that I'm in the prime position in terms of my equipment and in my body. I always felt like there's room to improve. And I guess Valentino must have that same mentality to some degree, or else, I'm sure if he felt like he was the greatest and just kept, going for it and had no room to improve. I mean, it must get boring, winning or being racing for that long. If you're not improving and trying to find new ways to go quicker and faster, it's got to be boring.
Yeah, whenever the question gets put to him about when are you going to retire, because obviously he's more than 40 years old now, and you're 38, so he's obviously he had it 10 years ago. People say when are you going to call it a day? And the thing he keeps coming back to whenever it comes around to contract time again is he says, I'll sign if I still think I can get podiums and wins. And that's clearly then the thing that sort of keeps driving him, that is so long as he's got that feeling that he's able to have those top 3 positions, well, then why would he stop? Because he still loves it. Is that similar to your sort of motivation then?
Yeah, definitely. I think at this point in probably both our careers, regardless if we were competitive, we'd probably still be able to get some kind of ride to keep racing. But I feel like if I'm not competitive and I'm not able to gun for a podium, to gun for a win, I feel I'll be taking a position of a couple other riders that could utilize that position a bit more. So when the day comes that I'm not competitive, then it's definitely when I will pull the plug. But, right now, and I'm still loving racing and I'm really missing it right now. And I feel like I am competitive. I'll keep racing.
That's pretty interesting then, that your focus when you're thinking about it is more, well, I'm taking up space here that a younger rider could make more of, rather than you don't seem to, do you focus on the idea of your legacy at all, or going out on top kind of in a great grand
Grand
thing at the
finale.
end of your career, or is it
Well,
literally just like, well, I can't make the most of this anymore, so I shouldn't try?
I mean, I think it's important to go out on top to some degree, but how do you know when you know that you're not going to be up there again? I think there comes a point where both kind of situations collide, where you're feeling tired of racing and it's really a big effort to get out and train, and you're not training as hard. And I think that's when it's time to pull it, rather than let those results slide till you're at the back of the pack, just dribbling around. I think it's better to just go out when you're still competitive and when you still want to win. I think you'll realize the point when training is way too hard and it outweighs that moment that you're having in racing.
That's really cool. I get that. So let's talk about the concept of the greatest of all time a bit more then, because I think in our own world we've got a few different definitions. It's something which, I also work on MotoGP's social media team, and Fran works in the main communications department. You don't see MotoGP as the championship declaring anybody as the GOAT. It's sort of a thing, because it's such a sort of fan debate, because you've got different definitions of it. You've got, in your case, where it's undeniable you are the most decorated rider of all time. But then you've also got, you could argue that the greatest of all time needs to have an aspect of influence on the sport. So, okay, maybe Rossi hasn't got the amount of wins that Agostini has, but you can't deny that anybody else has had more of an impact on the sport over the last 20 years than he has. But then you've also, some people would say, well, this is the person I think is the greatest to ever riding a motorcycle. Some people give that accolade to Casey Stoner. Some people will now give it to Marc Marquez, and Marc Marquez could go on to destroy all records there ever could be. So what would be your interpretation of the GOAT, both in your world of mountain biking and also us as well?
And don't worry, this doesn't have to be like, this is how I see myself.
Yeah.
Well, I think in mountain biking it's a lot different to motorcycle racing. We're a lot younger sport. So our history doesn't go back to like the Agostinis and everyone else. We've got a generation that I raced against when I was coming up. So the Steve Peets and Nicholas Fulio, they were the greats when I joined in, and I was managed to compete against them and beat them at the same time. I think where it more comes into line is every time there's been a new generation of riders, I've managed to challenge or at least beat the rider who's brought this new level of racing. So over the last 20 years, we've had Nicholas Fulio, we've had Steve Peet, Sam Hill, Aaron Gwynn, and now we've got the young Luke Brody, who I've also managed to beat now and then, but I think I just need to beat him a little bit more.
Yeah, that's very true.
It seems like as well, you guys have a bit of a different kind of rivalry to what we can see in MotoGP. Seems a little bit more focused on the on track, maybe a little bit more relaxed off track. But how is that to deal with when, like you say, you've been there kind of from the start, and then you do get these younger guys coming in? Like we saw Marquez in MotoGP appear and just obliterate what should be happening within a couple of races. How is that when you're one of the other guys who's been at the crest of that wave and then is like, okay, how am I going to cope with this now? How am I going to bring it back and show them a little bit who's boss every now and then?
Yeah, it's pretty hard sometimes because, over the years you've had to adjust the way you look at the bike and how you set your bike up. Being such a young sport, I go back 15 years, our suspension was really slow and soft compression, where now it's super hard compression and fast rebound. It's completely opposite to what we had. And so I've had to adjust over time to my bike, and my riding to be able to stay with the pack or in the pack. The rivalry side is quite a lot different to motorsport. It doesn't matter what I can do on track, it's not going to affect the race run of anyone else. And as soon as you can comprehend that in downhill racing, it probably gives you a little bit of an edge over your competitors, that once you just focused on your race run and you're the fastest you can be on that race run with eliminating anyone else out of your mind, and you totally focus on yourself, I think that will create a lot more confidence in the rider. Whereas when you're on the start line with a bunch of other guys and you maybe make an aggressive pass or maybe do something that's borderline aggressive, and you bump into someone and you new kid on the block, then you suddenly get a, he's an aggressive rider, or, and that kind of makes it a bit tougher when you're bumping elbows with someone, because you might not necessarily mean to, but it happens, and then you might just get called out on it. Where in downhill racing, we don't have that. Exactly,
That's really interesting. And there's a few things I want to pick up from this. I mean, I'll come back to sort of the technical side a little bit later. But out of all these guys who have come through in your time, you talk about, obviously, most recently has been Loic Bruni and Omri Piron, like coming and blowing the field apart, bringing just faster than ever. Is there anyone, can you give us some examples of people who've come in, they've come through the under-23 ranks, and then they're suddenly in the senior field. You've watched them go down a mountain, you've gone, yep, I'm going to have to switch it up again then.
Yeah.
Who's the most sort of standout examples of that?
Possibly the most standout is Sam Hill. He had a completely different style of riding. He could ride these really tight lines, and super aggressive in his run. And he could just find time out of nowhere. And it forced me to try and ride, instead of adapting my riding style to try and ride how he rode. And that's what most people would try and do. It made me focus more on my own style of riding and work harder on trying to, ride the way I feel is quicker for my type of style and body type versus his. He'd ride a tight line. I prefer to be off the brakes, just railing the outside. That's just the style of riding I ride. But he was just really tough to beat. He was just an incredible rider who could just, be up by 3-4 seconds in the middle of nowhere. Just not sure how or why. Just incredibly gifted technically.
That's pretty interesting then, because obviously in MotoGP we've seen like Marquez coming in. Now everyone's dragging their elbow. We had Rossi with the leg dangle in the braking zone that a lot of people now do. But then you also do have people, certainly to my mind, the first example would be like Jorge Lorenzo, who, other than I think one moment in that race at Brno, has never dangled his leg, has never gone the Marquez aggressive style at all, and really seemed to double down on being like, right, okay, I can beat you, but everything I do now has to be so perfect. And like, there's the aggression that they learn, it kicks up the gear of the competition, but it doesn't really make them change. It just makes you really double down. It sounds like you kind of just went for that as well.
Yeah, I kind of had to. I couldn't ride these inside lines. I couldn't ride this tight line racing. And I think, when someone comes in with a new style of riding, it always distracts your focus on, maybe they're beating you because of this new, maybe dragging an elbow or dangling a leg. This, and half of it, I think, is just psyching out the competitors with this new angle to racing, which then boosts the confidence of the guy who's doing it. So then he just gains a little more. So yeah, it's totally psychological. It probably has nothing to do with the race, but that's where downhill, you're practicing, you see the guy once or twice and he's on this really tight line and he's really quick because he won the weekend before. So now you start to think that that's the best line to be on. But, you're really fine on the line, a meter on the outside, just railing the outside as fast as you can. You're probably quicker, carrying more speed, but suddenly you're starting to second guess yourself if this is the line you need to be on. And that's what makes downhill racing so hard is not knowing where your competitors are or what they're doing, and if that inside line is actually really good or is the guy just teasing you and working on your confidence.
That's so funny. We a couple of things with that is we spoke to a comedian called Ross Noble the other week. I don't know if you heard of him. He's massive in the UK and Australia, maybe not South Africa. But he was joking about how he thinks Rossi, when he retires, is going to come out and say, "Hi guys, by the way, the leg dangle, just did it to make you see if you could all do it as well." It doesn't actually do anything else. And so I think, I mean, clearly so many of them do it. It has some kind of benefit, even if it just makes them feel comfortable. But that sort of psychological aspect of doing something just to really psych out your competitors seems really interesting. And even more so with you guys, like you said, because it's not a mass start race, it's a time trial. And it's not as if you can actually go out and watch them on the course whilst they're racing either. The only view you've got maybe is if you're already down the bottom and you're watching the TV of them coming down. So it's I guess it's just such a different psychological battle almost.
It is. I broke my arm the beginning of 2018 season, so I got to watch a couple of races on the sideline. And then I'm walking down the track, watching these guys and training for me is the most stressful time. It's, I'm trying to get comfortable on my bike, set the bike up, choose the lines, and try and find the quickest way down. And I'm watching these guys in this section of track in Austria, and it's on that particular track, it's probably the meat of the track where you're going to possibly make the most time or lose the most time. And I'm watching these guys, and they're trying to do all these different lines, and I'm just watching on the sideline going, well, if he just sticks to the main line and rides it really fast and simple, it's going to be quicker than all these different lines that they're trying. But yet, when I'm on the track the following year, I'm exactly in that same position, panicking if I need to be 2 inches to the right or 2 inches to the left, instead of just, having the confidence of going, bomb down the middle, take the left-hander, stick to the main line, out the section, and go for it.
Do you know what?
You get so caught up in that moment.
Do you know what you just had a real experience of during that time? You got a real impression of what it's like to be a sofa racer and the armchair experts who are looking at that going, no, what he needs to do is he needs to brake at this point and turn and this stuff and that, but then putting it into reality is a completely different thing, isn't it?
Oh, for sure it is. But I mean, there's always a bit of truth to some, armchair racers for sure.
Oh, wow, that's the fairest comment I've ever heard about them.
I don't know. I always think if someone's got something to say, it's worth the listen. But you got to also be able to filter some of it,
Some of it is just an angry person yelling at you from the other side of a screen. But I guess some of it, I mean, there's a reason why so many elite sportsmen will watch events back and look at competitors. Maybe there is that person. If you've been a fan for, a decade, maybe you do have something useful to contribute. But sometimes it is like, okay, guys, let's calm down.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to the basics.
Exactly.
Something an armchair competitor never seems to remember.
Yeah. So also, one of the things we wanted to talk about was South Africa, as we can see it in its gloriousness behind you. Obviously, you're kind of a sporting icon now, as you are the greatest of all time in your sport. We're going to keep saying it, sorry. But now you have guys like Brad Binder and Darren Binder as well, his brother, starting to represent, at higher and higher levels. Obviously, Brad, Moto3 champion, now MotoGP rider. What is it like kind of being, because like you said, or like we said earlier, it's quite a big country, but it's quite a sort of narrow amount of guys who are in that really elite category representing on the world stage. How is that to be one of those guys who's kind of like flying the flag? I'm going to discount the Springboks on this because obviously.
Yeah. I would say like in non-traditional sports, we've done pretty well, for being such a small country really, and with less exposure to sport. I mean, motor racing, there's been some great riders coming out of South Africa. There was Jan Ekrold from back in the 70s or 60s.
Yeah.
And I think he might have been from Pietermaritzburg as well.
Wow.
I definitely know his brother's still around. So
that is some. See, you said don't put me on the spot with some knowledge, but that's some niche knowledge right there.
So motor racing has been, a great. We've had a great history of motorsport from South Africa, and then there's just been this gap of no real big fireworks. And now Brad Binder's just come on, and it's just created another buzz for motorsport, which is really cool, and it's really needed because it does help the local racing pick up and the local scene. More guys will get involved because they're able to support and follow, and then they want to compete themselves. So it's really cool to see the Binders, both of them doing really well.
Yeah. And have you?
Like we said, like on a traditional sport, cricket, rugby, we do pretty good, and this whole new wave of untraditional sports, mountain biking, motorsport, and there's other sports where there's just this random South African that will just appear up in the top view, and it's kind of cool, but yet we don't really, like I said, the first time I met Brad was here at our local motocross track, so it's not like we know each other very well, but we're quite a passionate country, so we do try and support each other as much as we can.
I worry now the way you said that we've made it sound like it's some sort of sporting Illuminati and that you all hang out on the weekend. Because of course you
wish it was. I think it'd be pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I just imagine it'd be one of the best braais you could ever have, couldn't it? Really. But, I want to ask you about that then. Your impact on the sport in South Africa, because you must be an icon, because you're an icon of mountain biking, but has that translated back home as well? And what sort of changes have you seen in terms of the cycling scene over there since all your successes?
Well, the mountain bike scene has definitely blown up over the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, but it moved to more marathon racing rather than gravity. And so I was kind of just left out of everything as this crazy guy who races downhill, because we all stick to marathon racing and we ride on dirt roads. So although he's a part of it, he's not really. And we kind of watch him on weekends, but we just ride marathon and compete in marathon. So I was kind of excluded somewhat from the mountain bike community as a whole.
Is that because you're too cool for it, really?
No, it's just because they thought the Cape Epic was the world championship of mountain biking, and that's what everyone sees as the pinnacle of mountain biking in South Africa. So, but in the last couple of years, it's been quite a turn into gravity, and a lot more guys riding enduro, and it's cool. We've got a, we're from a pretty small city, but we've got a really decent sized scene. So it's starting to happen, but it's really hard when our currency is linked to the dollar and the rand dollar is very weak right now. It makes bikes kind of expensive. Bikes are pretty expensive as it is, but it just makes that equipment that much more. And that's really tough on the local guys trying to get into it.
Yeah, I can imagine as well, obviously, geographically, much like a few guys down under as well, a lot of these kind of events are often so based in Europe or North America when you reach a certain level. That's obviously a whole added challenge as well when you're kind of on the other side of the world.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. And I think with Red Bull TV doing such a great job on getting the coverage out there, that also helps. But then again, you need to make the decision at some point if you're actually going to have a crack at this and go to Europe and go and race. And you will find a lot more South African kids are taking that chance and going over. We've probably got about 10 or 12 kids now trying to set themselves up in Europe and give it a go, which is really cool. I mean, it's whether it's finishing school and having a couple gap years and then trying to race and make something of it, and then going back to study or making a success of it. I think it's a good avenue to tour the world, see what it's like, and also get some racing in.
That's really cool. And what sort of things then do you think that will translate to what Brad can probably expect over the next couple of years? Because obviously he's already a world champion, very nearly a two-time world champion in Moto2 as well, but now as a MotoGP rider, what can he expect to see in terms of appreciation from back home and sort of things that he's going to end up having to do, appearances here and there or something like that over the next few years?
Oh, Brad's pretty busy when he gets back. I've seen quite a lot of advertising about him getting around, so he's really getting the acknowledgement already. So it's really cool to see that the country supported him, because I don't think motorsport is that popular locally, and I think it has the same thing being a pretty expensive thing to do for our economy. But being such a global athlete like he is, I think everyone now sits down when he's watching and supports him just as much as they support the Springboks playing rugby.
That's really cool. What's going on behind you there? I got to ask, is someone mowing the lawn?
It's the neighbour cutting his grass. I think it's
I was wondering if it was just suddenly going to come into view and it'd be like, what?
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
Hopefully not.
I could hear it for a bit and I was like, is someone just going to go in the background? And that's where we mentioned it, but no, fair play. And then so yeah, about sort of Brad and Darren, then you met him last year doing motocross at your local track. Where was that then?
Yeah, they're really cool guys. I mean, they're very yin and yang. Brad's quite reserved and calm, and Darren's quite out there and wild, and you can see it both on their riding styles. The track's got a few different jumps, and Darren was on this 250 two-stroke, and as soon as he could put that bike in a straight line, he had a handful trying to jump these jumps. And Brad was just very neat and just precise. So yeah, I guess it happens when you got a younger brother. He's probably normally going to be the wild one out there too.
I guess as well, if you know Chaz then, Davis, like we said at the start of the episode, have you gone riding with those guys in Andorra as well? Or have they tried out some downhill with you?
Well, when I did go to Andorra, Chaz was coming back from a broken collarbone.
Okay, yeah, so...
He wasn't riding much mountain bikes, but he took me out to the motard track, and he was on this little mini bike. He was just, I guess, trying to see how his collarbone was doing, and I got on this motard bike, which I don't, growing up on dirt, it's completely different to the way those bikes track in corners, and I thought I was doing pretty good, and then John came flying past, clipped the little side, got a bit sideways, flicking down the straight, but just kept it open, straightened up, and took the corner like nothing had happened. But I had my GoPro on.
Yeah.
And I said to John, Flip, it looked like you were going to go down when you came past me. And he was like, oh, no, it was pretty cool. So I showed him the footage, and he was pretty surprised how sideways he got past me. So.
That's hilarious.
But it was a great day. It was super good. But I know those guys ride a lot of mountain bikes in the off-season, and it's definitely a part of their training. So I'm sure they're pretty decent at it.
Yeah, 100%. That's really cool. And it's a shame that we see so many MotoGP riders, Moto2, Moto3, they all do cycling, but it's all mainly road cycling and stuff like that. But occasionally a few of them do a bit of downhill and stuff like that. But I imagine they would be absolutely phenomenal at it. That sort of depth perception, the feel of the front tyre. It would be different, obviously. But I imagine sort of that natural feel they got with the bike would mean they're pretty mean on it.
Yeah, I'd imagine they'd be pretty good. I'm sure it's hard within the season. It's, summertime, all the bike parks open. I'm sure it's hard for them to get on a mountain bike and risk getting hurt, riding in a bike park. So that's probably one of the reasons why they stick to the road. So, yeah, it'll be good to get the guys out on some downhill and see how they go.
Awesome.
Maybe straight after they've retired, when that risk isn't such a worry, you can do some sort of master camp in the mountains and see what they've got.
Could be good.
I was going to actually just ask before we go on to the final round. Sorry, because we do have a little quick fire round. Final round. When are we going to manage to get Greg Minnaar to come to a MotoGP race then?
Well, I've been to a few. I did. Like I said, I don't like watching stuff, but I do enjoy it. I must say, there's a bit of me that just makes me so jealous watching these guys rip around.
Yeah.
But I have been to one, and then I got Randy Mamola offered to take me for a lap on his bike on that two-seater. And that was possibly the scariest thing I've ever done.
You've done it? Oh, awesome.
Oh, man. It was in Estoril. And I remember going down that start straight. It had been raining, and there were patches of water on all the corners. And we took off down this first straight wheeling, and we headed down for the corner. And I'm on this, holding these two little handles on the tank. And, I'm quite a bit taller than Randy. So my knees are by his ears, and he's coming down the straight. And he's trying to lean this bike in, and I'm trying to lean it out. And eventually we overshot the brake and just went straight. So he turned around, he's like, I'll tap you on the knee, just lean in, have confidence. I was like, there's no ways I'm having confidence. I can see it's wet. I can see over the top it's wet. And, the total difference of riding a bike off-road where you lean the bike in and you keep your body upright, to a motorbike where you're trying to lean on the inside of it, I just couldn't get the hang of it. I honestly thought I was going to die. It was, an Estoril, it's got that, long straight with a slight bend in. And it felt like we're doing about 400 k's an hour, and I'm just thinking I've got no strength holding these narrow little things on the handlebar. And here we go now. I'm just like, I feel like the leathers don't, I've never had to crash in leathers. Don't know how well they work. It just doesn't feel like much right now. And it was a great experience to have. But my heart rate must at least been about 200 the whole lap.
That is brilliant.
I do worry sometimes about non-athletes on those situations, because you're an elite athlete, so you're ready for the thrills and spills of life. But a normal kind of pedestrian coming out the civilian world, getting on the back of a motorbike with Randy Mamola and then doing 300 Ks, it must be even more a vicious wake up when you set off.
I don't know. I'd probably like to do it without knowing what was coming, without having any bike experience. Because then you'll just lean in and you just enjoy it. And, you're going fast, but wow, this guy's great. Meantime, I'm thinking that Randy might have lost it over the years, and he wants to aim in this wet corner, with all my great road experience that I have, which is zero. I'm trying to feel like I need to lean this bike the opposite.
That is so funny because I watched last year when we were at Mugello, we had two F1 drivers there. You had Charles Leclerc and Antonio Giovinazzi. And on the Saturday, Giovinazzi, the Alfa Romeo, Kimi Raikkonen teammate, I watched him go out. It was his second time on the two-seater, and he literally trotted out and leapt on that bike, and he was just beaming and so ready for it. Yeah, you would have think it's sort of an F1 driver, almost a bit like you. They almost don't. They're not sure of the level of control that the rider's got. You know, they wouldn't be. They're like, I can handle the speed, no problem, if it's me in control, but not with somebody else. But he was loving it. It's just so fascinating to hear the complete opposite from you. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and I guess, like you said, it's definitely a control thing. You know, it's the same when I fly. You know, I hate flying. I'm absolutely shit scared of heights.
Same.
And if I'm in the airplane, I'm sitting there like clenching the armrest and the seatbelt's just strapped in. And if it's smooth, I'm relatively okay. But if there's any bit of bumping, I feel like I need to go into the cockpit and check what's going on, because you know, you don't know if this guy's like just rallying this plane or what it's doing, or just sit there calm, or you feel like you could kind of help out in some kind of way. But yeah, I think that's just the control side.
I genuinely have exactly the same thing. Obviously, not got any pilot's training. I did one flying lesson a few years ago that my mum got me for my birthday in like a little biplane. And I was completely fine, even when I'm like learning and like pitching it everywhere, because it's me, even though that's obviously far more risky because I have zero skill. But as soon as I'm in a 747 and it goes a little bit, I'm like, what's happening there though? I feel like I should go and check. Maybe they need instructions.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely
It's really strange.
All I've got to say about that, Greg, is it's a good job that you don't have a job which requires you to fly all over the world with that sort of fear, then, isn't it?
No, tell me about it.
Okay, so should we...
You were saying, when is the next MotoGP? What is the schedule this year? Is it out?
It should be, by the time this is published, it should be out, yes.
It is. It will be, yeah. This is going to be published in a couple of weeks from the time of recording. But yeah, it will be published, and we're off to Jerez at the end of July.
Yeah, cool. I think we don't have the calendar right now internally at the moment, but hopefully in a couple of days, and then the turnaround between us getting it and it being published should be short, so it should be coming.
Yeah,
so we still should have about 12 or so races, or I think that was the aim that everyone wants. And then at the end of the season, I think they're going to wait till the end of the next couple of months and see whether we can actually go out of Europe as well. So might still get a relatively full season yet. So, and you guys, when you're racing, you've already had your calendar released, haven't you? August, September time?
We have, yeah.
Awesome.
I think we released it. We're going to start off in September, but we've already lost a round, so which is unfortunate. We lost another round, but it's all going to stay in Europe. I think it's just
makes sense.
A little easier right now. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So maybe I need to come out. I think the last MotoGP I was at was the Laguna Seca, probably 2012.
Was that around the time of a Sea Otter Classic or something like that, or some US World Cup round?
No. Randy was out and I was in town, so I met up with him and went out.
Oh, cool!
Awesome.
Yeah.
Laguna, and that whole part of California is beautiful. I understand why we now have COTA on our calendar, of course, which is also a beautiful track. But Laguna, I went there for Superbike because that's where I started, and it's a special place.
Yeah, no, it is good. No, often I remember when Casey Stoner was still racing, I used to get a call from Chris from Alpine Stars, and I'd be at a race, and he was like, "Hey, Greg, sorry to bother you. I know you've got qualifying tomorrow and stuff, but we're at Laguna Seca, and I'm with Casey, and he wants to try and ride the downhill track. Can you tell us where it is? Because there's a downhill track that's pretty mellow out the back." And so they were hunting around, and I'm like, well, you got to go over this hill to the right. So you can see this mound, and that's the start. And so yeah, I knew the guys are ripping up the trail down there.
Yeah, because I forgot you used to be with Alpine Stars, didn't you? So I guess you would have had a lot of connections and things that sort of way, wouldn't you?
I did, yeah. Yeah, we developed the mountain bike stuff in 2004 when I was riding a Honda. So yeah, it was a great experience.
Awesome. Well, should we do the Kenwood Quickfire round then, Fran?
Yeah, the one that you've just said it like we've already warned him.
Yes.
So traditionally at the end, we have a Kenwood Quickfire, obviously sponsored by Kenwood, who also give us our radios in the paddock in MotoGP. So good partner extending that. But basically, we either do kind of quick fire questions or more word association. We thought with you being a native English speaker, we'll go all in with the quick fire questions. Again, don't worry, it's not a quiz. It's not knowledge based. It's personal preference.
Yeah, and sort of instant reaction stuff. You can keep it quick, or you can go on a bit of a tangent if you want. We've realised we should rename it to the Kenwood Not So Quick Fire, to be honest.
Sometimes, yeah.
So shall I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes, let's do. Okay, so we start off always with a very simple one. What do you prefer, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
I feel like we're showing our Britishness by continuing to start with that question, to be honest, but we'll roll with it. Who's your top sporting hero, or who were your heroes when you were growing up?
Heroes growing up was Greg Albertine, was a South African motocross rider, and that was my all-time hero growing up.
What do you prefer, supercross or motocross?
Supercross.
What's the best place in the world to ride a mountain bike?
I'd like to say home, but it's definitely Europe. There's Andorra, there's Morzine, there's too many places. That's what's so great about a mountain bike.
Awesome. Yes or no, air horns should be a part of every MotoGP race, like in downhill, not just at Mugello?
Every MotoGP.
I think every sporting event, even like Wimbledon, like get them out there, just add some spice.
Can you imagine Wimbledon?
Be nuts.
I can imagine that would be a bit chaotic. What's your favourite MotoGP track?
I'd have to go with Estoril because it's the only one I've been around.
Even though the experience wouldn't pertain to it being your favourite, but yeah. What is your dream motorcycle on or off-road?
It's an off-road. Yeah. I just, I love motocross bikes.
Which is your favourite motocross bike? What is your dream one to have?
I've got a KTM 250 now, which is my dream right now. And there's nothing more that I would want.
Oh, that's nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Who's the person who taught you the most about riding bikes? Motorbikes or otherwise? Your dad? Okay.
Both my dad, yeah.
I thought that would be the nice answer. What is the best event on the UCI World Cup calendar?
Andorra. Valentino in Andorra.
Mm-hmm. Why is that? The circuit or the place?
The track is amazing for riding. The riders just love the track, and there's always quite a lot of atmosphere in the finish area with. It's just somehow in the mountains, it's a beautiful one. And of course, there's also Fort William. I mean, Scotland, the atmosphere there is also incredible. Mm-hmm. Those are my top two.
Cool.
Okay, cool. What about 3 sporting icons to have dinner with? Who would you pick? Or to choose to have dinner with? I made that sound like a torture.
Let's see. Can some of them... Yeah, I'd have to go with Greg Albertine, Valentino Rossi, and Neymar. I think Neymar, the football player, would have some stories.
Okay, that's an interesting combo.
Yeah, didn't actually pick that one out at all, actually. Okay, so one tip for staying as calm, relaxed, and zen in life as Greg Minnaar.
Geez, my life is not calm nor relaxed.
You seem it.
The only bit that is calm and relaxed is lockdown. That's been the best thing for me. But my like a holiday to me is not relaxing because I want to go surfing and I want to go riding motorbikes and bicycles and it's just chaotic. So there is nothing. The only thing that gets me calm is maybe a barbecue or something with friends. That's just the ultimate. And that's usually not very relaxing either.
Yeah, that's true. So tip there is have a barbecue with your friends, at the moment, socially distanced.
Exactly.
So what is the most nerve-wracking part of what you do, or the thing that makes you the most nervous? You said training before, right?
True. What makes me nervous? Well, racing itself makes me really nervous. It's pushing yourself to that far out of either your control or to the limits of your control, skimming past rocks and trees and everything else. That makes me nervous.
Okay, top of your bucket list MotoGP race to attend.
I've heard Valencia is pretty good.
Okay, interesting. I like Valencia. Sometimes the track gets a bit of a kind of
bad rap.
Don't even know that. There you go. I was
Really?
like, what's the good word for that? But the atmosphere, because it's in that kind of natural amphitheater, I love Valencia. It's super cool.
Don't they always end the season in Valencia?
Yeah,
exactly. So you often get like
heard that's the one to go to.
yeah. It's
It's
really
cool.
it's a great one. Magello is probably another one, and Phillip Island as well. I would say personally.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I should put those on my bucket list then, if those are the best three.
We'll hook you up, or Alpine Stars Cat, or someone can.
Okay, so describe mountain. I don't know what happened there. Describe mountain biking in 3 words or less.
Peaceful, exciting, and social.
Nice. And now describe MotoGP in 3 words or less.
Intense, aggressive, and wild.
The opposite.
Cool.
Cool. Okay, final one then.
No, that was the final one, wasn't it?
Final one.
I can't read, sorry. Why should everyone listening ride either bikes or motorbikes? I should say bicycles, shouldn't I? I think I say bikes now to mean both. It's hard to tell. Why would you say someone should get into either of those sports? What's in it for them? What's the best thing about
Motorbikes
it?
and bicycles.
Yeah.
Either. It's just, I think both hand in hand work well for each other. Bicycles, obviously it's a healthier lifestyle, and motorbikes get to see more places, get to tour. I just think you definitely need both in your garage. I don't think it's worth living without.
That's awesome. Yeah, because we did that before with Ross Noble, who's a big sort of motorcyclist, and it's nice to have someone fight the corner for both of them as well. So that is the Kenwood Quickfire. Before we go though, we have one favour to ask of you.
Yeah.
We want to do this new thing. So when we do the thumbnails for the YouTube version of this podcast, we want to do like a screenshot of the guest and then maybe us as well. So can we ask you to pull a funny face which we can put on the thumbnail, please? and we'll do one as well. If we hold it for like 3 seconds, like kind of close to the camera, like
This is like really awkward, but no, we can do it. Just feel a bit awkward in this house.
But you're gonna be. You can always sit back a little bit from the camera, but just do like a funny face, like. And then, but we're gonna ask all the guests to do it, so you're not alone, all right?
Yeah, you're just the first one, so you're guinea pig, but hopefully.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, so in 3 seconds.
Send off going, this is why we're not doing it, because look at this idiot.
That'll be me though, the idiot. Anyways, okay, so in 3 seconds we do it. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Wonderful work, guys.
We're not going to put that in the audio version, but we'll keep that in the video version because that's fun. Greg, this has been so much fun getting to know you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks a lot for reaching out. It's good to be a part of your show.
It was great to chat to someone that I kind of know. Obviously, like we said, I've watched you many videos while Matt's had it on in the living room, and I've been like, oh, this is actually quite good. I think I've made a mistake not showing interest. So, hope you enjoyed that good chat with Greg Minnaar. I know I certainly did. Very chill guy. Very good chat, I think, if you would agree. I know you were quite excited to talk to him.
I was incredibly excited to talk to Greg Minnaar. What an absolute legend.
So we've started doing this now, the things you need to go and search for after you listen to the episode. We did mention them earlier, but the This is PT YouTube series, definitely. This is how I got interested in it. Never watched anything before.
Unmissable.
And then Matt had it on in the living room. And then, the Team Syndicate series after that a little bit, was it not?
Yes, it followed after Steve retired. They followed up with the Syndicate series from 2016,
this is what I think.
And
my personal favourite video for anyone who's not really been into mountain biking at all is 2011 World Champs. I keep getting wrong, I'm sorry.
With Rob Warner. the commentator.
Yes, and the commentator going crazy over Danny Hart's run is genuinely one of the greatest things of sports broadcasting you will ever see.
So
go and look for it.
Very, very similar, of course, to you and I commentating on the Age of Talent Cup, British Talent Cup.
Absolutely.
No, it really is brilliant.
That's a real classic, that is. So, yeah, check that out.
And for me, one more thing you guys got to check out. We mentioned it a little bit. You can see in the background of that whole interview, if you're actually watching on YouTube, beautiful scenery behind, beautiful valley. That is the Peter Maritzburg sort of valley that you have there. Greg's house overlooking the World Cup, a World Championship track where he won the World Championships there in 2013 in his own backyard. And I think that is probably one of those most badass things you could do as a sporting competitor, to have your house built. So every morning when you walk out of your bedroom, you overlook the place where you did one of your greatest sporting achievements of your career. I think that's absolutely sensational.
Very much very cool, I think.
Yeah.
But so I think that's everything for this week.
Not
exactly sure.
No, what's
coming at you now? Yeah.
But,
so stay tuned. As you can see from some of the guests we've been bringing you lately, whether in paddock, out paddock, I think we're doing okay on the lineup. As ever, let us know. Faith. So it should be someone exciting. But so stay tuned for more, and thank you for listening.
See you next Monday.